Do you guys remember this computer? The one we built, Phil, last year? Was it last year? Yeah, it was a little while ago. This is Phil's ITX build. It's in the Fantex Evolve Shift. We got a problem. It gets really hot. So we figured we would solve that today by transferring all his stuff into the case that we just reviewed the other day, the Cooler Master Box NR200P Max Master Max. The all-new Z20 mechanical gaming keyboard from EVGA features optical mechanical switches available in clicky or linear versions, TOF sensor, 4 kHz report rate, and media controls, making it a great choice for multi-purpose setups. To learn more and to see the full list of features of the new Z20 from EVGA, click the link in the description below. All right, so if you guys haven't seen our review of this case, make sure you go and check that out first, and you'll see a lot of the reasons why we decided to move this stuff over to this chassis. But first, we gotta give you guys some baselines. Keep in mind right now, the Evolve Shift, this was the glass version. They came out with an air version after that, which has the fabric side panels. This one here not only features the fabric side panel on the back, which helps push hot air out. This also features the Mod My Mods custom front intake here, which puts some vents right in front of these fans. There's a few nuances about this case though that people might notice right away. This is quite honestly the absolute worst orientation for any AIO, but that's the way the case is designed, where the radiator goes on the bottom, tubes go up to the pump sitting above the rad. Phil has already had a failure in this case with the 120 AIO because of this exact issue. So anyway, we want to show you guys some before and after data. So if we take a look here, we've had Heaven running for a long time. This is a DX11 title. It's not super demanding. This is a 9900K. He's got 16, no, that's what? 64 gigs. I forgot that. I gave you the special RAM. I gave you the special RAM that only works on like 3 different motherboards, but that's 64 gigabytes in dual channel, so 2 32 gig sticks of RAM on his 9900K, but it is also an RTX 3080 Founders Edition card. So in terms of our initial temperatures here, this has been running now for probably 30 minutes or so. Our GPU is maxed out at 76C. It'll hit 76 and come back to 75, 76, 75. The GPU itself is actually benefiting the most from this chassis because of the way that the fans are on the RTX. So you got one as an exhaust and you got one pulling air in through the side, which is better than any axial fan. He actually had an AIO card in here initially that was obviously a lot slower because it was a 2080 Super. It wasn't even a 30 series, you know, because those are old. Nobody wants those anymore. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. So temperatures on the GPU, perfectly fine. But what we're gonna be looking at here, it's dropped bins down to 1980. With the small overclock that Phil's applied, the first bin you hit is a 2025. So we've lost 4 or 5 bins, and at that temperature, power is drawing about 350 watts because he does have the power limit slider maxed out to 115, so it's an extra 15% power. Crazy part is the CPU has jumped all the way up to 64 degrees at 23 to 25% load. The CPU in here, 5.2 gigahertz manual overclock on the 9900K, which only has a 10-second turbo timer. So after 10 seconds, even if it doesn't thermal throttle, it's gonna bring itself down anyway, but don't worry, thermal throttles within 10 seconds. And we'll demonstrate that. This 120 AIO in this configuration, in this chassis, just cannot keep a 9900K tame. So those are our GPU temps. Let's go ahead and demonstrate our CPU temps. We've got Cinebench somewhere. I don't know where you put it. Ah, there it is. You're gonna see that just bing, like completely max out. There we go. 100C immediately. 4.399, 5.1, 4.2, 4.7. And it kind of equalized itself in the upper 80s at about 4.7 gigahertz. So it was like, nope. Okay, there we go. So it's like one of those little scales, right? It's like, Now, the longer the CPU is doing that, the less performance you're gonna get overall out of it. So we're gonna obviously compare our scores here. It's sitting at 4.6 right now. It was at 4.7, so we dropped another 100 there, back to 4.7. 89C, 90C, although within spec, not comfortable. That's just not comfortable. This is asking an awful lot of a single 120 AIO to keep a 9900K overclocked, nice and cool. So that's what we're gonna compare after we transfer everything over into here. Again, I'm not gonna go into all the reasons why we're choosing this case over this one. Phil likes the finish on this one more, obviously. This is like a media blasted anodized aluminum, whereas this is a powder coated steel. but it's still gray and black and has tempered glass side panel. It also comes with a perforated panel, so we can test side panel on with glass, see if we're choking off the GPU by putting the vented one on there. If the temperatures are within a reasonable range of each other, then he'll leave the glass panel on because it looks nicer. I'm gonna let Phil open it up and clean out the dust because that's all his skin. So he can have that back. So here's everything in our Cooler Master shoebox. Phil's happy because now he can see his 3080, which was on the back side before, so he couldn't see it at all, and now he can. So this is a 280 millimeter AIO in here. Nothing has changed whatsoever. It's the same install, just hardware is transplanted into here. I changed the fans on the top so we can have the RGB. Obviously those are the Lee & Lee fans. So let's go ahead and see what we got here. So we got the sensor panel up on the screen because, as you can see, there's nowhere for the sensor panel to go in here. We might look at doing some mod or something for the front. So before he was very limited to only a 5-second turbo timer. I think we thought it was 10. He saw in the extreme settings it was 5. So now it's literally like melt yourself to death. So we're just gonna kind of see what the temps look like. It's gonna get hot, but the question is, will it throttle? So let's see. Multi-core Cinebench R23. Look at that, right to 92, but look at the frequency, 5.1, that's all core. 95, 93, 91, 93, staying at 5.1, completely locked. Yes, that is hot. This is an AIO. We're asking a lot of it for a very overclocked. Look how much 230 or so watts being drawn from the CPU socket alone. So that's how you could get an idea of just how far we've pushed it. This is not real world scenario. This is literally a stress test. This is pushing it as far as it could possibly go. So remember, before we dropped down to like 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, around there, we were at 10,600 or somewhere around there. We're clearly gonna beat that score. 5.1 all core still, it hit 100C. Not recommended to stay there forever, but this is, well, we're showing you now. This case allowed him to get a score of 11,660. But yeah, there's our CPU test. Let's go ahead and load up Heaven. Same exact afterburner settings as before. He's got his own custom fan profile. He's got a 40 megahertz offset on the overclock for the core, plus 250 offset for the memory, exactly where it was when we started the video today. We're gonna let Heaven run until it maxes out. I'll be honest, I don't know if we're gonna see better or worse on the GPU. I feel like it could potentially be worse. only in the sense that that fan on the backside, it's just blowing it right into the power supply. And it's a solid part of the power supply because power supply brings in air from the other side, which I can actually feel it, pulls air in through the back and up to the top and exhausted inside the case. I tried to turn the power supply around so that the air from the GPU could technically go into the PSU and be exhausted out, so it has a little bit more of a depth to blow through. But by doing that, the 24 pin would no longer reach the motherboard because I took it from being the closest side to the motherboard to the farthest side, so then it just wasn't long enough because the cables are so short in this case because they are custom fit. So I'm curious, remember 75 and then touching 76 occasionally was our max temps before with a 1980 overclock or 1980 core clock. So we'll see if it gets any better. All right, the GPU has completely stabilized at nice degrees. That is a 6 to 7 degree drop with the exact same settings versus the shift. That's enough to be a couple of boost bins. In fact, we're sitting at 1995. We were at 2010 for a while. Our CPU, as you can see right here, is at 60 degrees, 58 degrees. It bounces all around. Right now it's a little higher. 5.2 gigahertz the entire time. And Phil is perfectly fine with this. He's like, higher core clock's better for high FPS. These temperatures are well within reason, because remember 105 is our max. We'll get nowhere near there under gaming conditions. And the GPU with his fan curve, nothing changed, overclocked, 69 degrees. We were thinking about testing it with the side panel, just for comparison. But Phil's like, nope, the glass panel's staying on, so I'm not even gonna show the side panel because I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference. It just looks like the GPU's in jail.
That's a surprisingly cool look too, honestly.
See, it's at 2010 at 68. So you gained a bin and dropped a degree with this side panel. If you care about performance, obviously the side panel is the way to go. I feel like you're just gonna switch based on your mood.
Based on my mood.
Now it looks like some sort of a reactor or something that's got like this protective grill in front of it. Why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and cut for a sec. I'm gonna see if I can't get a fan in the bottom, see how that looks. And if I can, that might be enough extra oomph in terms of helping convection and bringing cold air onto the GPU and force feeding more cold air to the AIO. It might give him the best of both worlds. He can have his glass panel and the temps we just saw. So check it out. We got the fan put in the bottom. It's a 140 millimeter fan. And so that's bringing in air from the bottom, but we're actually hotter on both the CPU and the GPU. Interestingly, and just stringingly enough, we're starting to think maybe Cooler Master did test fans in the bottom and thought that. So our idea here is that if this was a horizontal graphics card and not a vertical, then it would be blowing air right into the fan intake. But I'm thinking with this fan trying to make air go perpendicular and the fan right below it pushing air this way, that fan might be pushing air right past the GPU before the GPU can pull it in. So it's creating a weird like vortex sort of happening there. That's my thought. I also thought it would help the CPU, and I just saw 75 degrees for a second, which is something we hadn't seen yet on the AIO while we were sitting here. So I think we're gonna probably take that fan out. What do you think, Phil? Did we take the fan out? Yeah. So just imagine we didn't put that fan in there. And that's where we're gonna go and end this video. So there you go. We just figured what perfect opportunity here to do a build in this case after I fell in love with it with our initial first look and overview. Phil, I've been trying to get Phil to change the shift for a year now. Because when because I knew it wasn't living up to temperature potential. So for instance,
it was a change for Jay because my computer was annoying Jay.
It was annoying me knowing that you were hitting those types of temps, that your AIO was in a terrible configuration that already caused you to have to change it once. Your graphics card was running hotter than it needed to. 75 isn't terrible, but hotter than it needed to. I mean, look, we're still at 71 right now with this bad config. The CPU clearly wasn't getting enough cooling, but you are very particular with the aesthetics. So this still met the requirement for looking good in your space, not taking up a lot of space because you have a small desk for your gaming area. So that's what you liked about the Shift, is it was more vertical real estate. This isn't that much more real estate, although a little longer. It's not going to take up a ton of space in your system. It looks the part. The gunmetal color of the graphics card goes really well with the rest of the system. All the black accents, your teal RGB lighting. In fact, you even have more lighting now that you can visibly see like all your components, which before all you saw was a fan and a AIO and your CPU block. That was it. Now you can actually see the best part of your system, which is that 3080, because that's a brick of gold at this point in time. And I'm happy now because you can see it and it is running at a lot better temperature, especially once we get that fan out of there. Anyway, with that said, it's time to go, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Phil, I hope you enjoy this case. You gotta send me a picture later of what it looks like in your setup. So, all right, guys, make sure you check out the Cooler Master NP200R or NR200P Max at the link down below. They didn't sponsor this video. I just think it's a great case and you guys should go and check it out if you're in the small form factor. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.